The Law of One Session 84, April 14, 1982.
Ra, I am Ra. I greet you, my friends, in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. We communicate now.
Questioner, could you first please give me the condition of the instrument?
Ra, I am Ra. The physical complex energy level of the instrument is in sizable deficit. The vital energies are well.
Questioner, in the last session you mentioned least distorted complex protein in that the body complex of the instrument was capable of greatly increased distortion. Would you define the protein of which you spoke, and we would like to know, increased distortion in which direction, towards health or ill health?
Ra, I am Ra. We were, in the cautionary statement about complex protein, referring to the distortions of the animal protein which has been slaughtered and preservatives added in order to maintain the acceptability to your peoples of this non-living, physical material. It is well to attempt to find those items which are fresh and of the best quality possible in order to avoid increasing this particular entity's distortions, which may be loosely termed allergic. We were speaking of the distortion towards disease which is potential at this space/time.
Questioner, what disease in particular were you speaking of, and what would be its cause?
Ra, I am Ra. One disease, as you call this distortion, is that of the arthritis and the lupus erythematosus. The cause of this complex of distortions is, at base, pre-incarnative. We refrain from determining the other distortion potential at this space/time due to our desire to maintain the free will of this group. Affirmations may yet cause this difficulty to resolve itself. Therefore, we simply encouraged the general care with the diet with the instructions about allergy, as you call this quite complex distortion of the mind and body complexes.
Questioner, the instrument asked the following question: Ra has implied that the instrument is on a path of martyrdom, but since all die, are we not all martyred to something? When, if ever, does martyrdom partake of wisdom?
Ra, I am Ra. This is a thoughtful query. Let us use as exemplar the one known as Jehoshua. This entity incarnated with the plan of martyrdom. There is no wisdom in this plan, but rather understanding and compassion extended to its fullest perfection. The one known as Jehoshua would have been less than fully understanding of its course had it chosen to follow its will at any space/time during its teachings. Several times, as you call this measure, this entity had the possibility of moving towards the martyr's place, which was, for that martyr, Jerusalem. Yet in meditation this entity stated, time and again, it is not yet the hour. The entity could also have, when the hour came, walked another path. Its incarnation would then have been prolonged, but the path for which it incarnated somewhat confused. Thusly, one may observe the greatest amount of understanding, of which this entity was indeed capable, taking place as the entity in meditation felt and knew that the hour had come for that to be fulfilled which was its incarnation. It is indeed so that all mind/body/spirit complexes shall die to the third density illusion, that is, that each yellow ray physical complex body shall cease to be viable. It is a misnomer to, for this reason alone, call each mind/body/spirit complex a martyr, for this term is reserved for those who lay down their lives for the service they may provide to others. We may encourage meditation upon the functions of the will.
Questioner, can you make any suggestions about the instrument's feet or how they got in the bad shape they are in, and would alternating the shoes help?
Ra, I am Ra. The distortion referred to above, that is, the complex of juvenile rheumatoid arthritis and lupus erythematosus, acts in such a way as to cause various portions of the body complex to become distorted in the way in which the instrument's pedal appendages are now distorted. We may suggest care in resumption of the exercise, but determination as well. The alternation of footwear shall prove efficacious. The undergarment for the feet which you call the anklet should be of a softer and finer material than is now being used and should, if possible, conform more to the outline of those appendages upon which it is placed. This should provide a more efficient aid to the cushioning of these appendages. We may further suggest that the same immersion in the waters which is helpful to the general distortion is, in general, helpful to this specific distortion as well. However, the injury which has been sustained in the metatarsal region of the right pedal appendage should further be treated for some period of your space/time by the prudent application of the ice to the arch of the right foot for brief periods, followed always by immersion in the warm water.
Questioner, thank you. The instrument asks if the restricted, unpublishable healing information that was given during the first book be included in book 4, since readers who have gotten that far will be dedicated somewhat.
Ra, I am Ra. This publication of material shall, in time, shall we say, be appropriate. There is intervening material.
Questioner, thank you. I'm sure that we are getting into an area of problem with the first distortion here, and also with a difficulty in a bit of transient material here, but I have 2 questions from people that I'll ask, although I consider especially the first one to be of no lasting value. Andrija Puharic asks about coming physical changes, specifically this summer. Is there anything that we could relate to him about that?
Ra, I am Ra. We may confirm the good intention of the source of this entity's puzzles and suggest that it is a grand choice that each may make to, by desire, collect the details of the day or, by desire, to seek the keys to unknowing.
Questioner, I'm interested. I can't help but be interested in the fact that he had reported being taken on board craft. Could you tell me something about that?
Ra, I am Ra. The nature of contact is such that in order for the deep portion of the trunk of the tree of mind affected to be able to accept the contact, some symbology which may rise to the conscious mind is necessary as a framework for the explanation of the fruits of the contact. In such cases the entity's own expectations fashion the tale which shall be most acceptable to that entity, and in the dream state, or a trance state in which visions may be produced, this seeming memory is fed into the higher levels of the so-called subconscious and the lower levels of the conscious. From this point the story may surface as any memory and cause the instrument to function without losing balance or sanity.
Questioner, thank you. Going back to the previous session, it was stated that each sexual activity was a transfer before the veil. I am assuming from that you mean that there was a transfer of energy for each sexual activity before the veil, which indicates to me that a transfer doesn't take place every time. Taking the case before the veil, would you trace the flow of energy that is transferred and tell me if that was the planned activity or a planned transfer by the designing logos?
Ra, I am Ra. The path of energy transfer before the veiling during the sexual intercourse was that of the 2 entities possessed of green ray capability. The awareness of all as creator is that which opens the green energy center. Thusly there was no possibility of blockage due to the sure knowledge of each by each that each was the creator. The transfers were weak due to the ease with which such transfers could take place between any 2 polarized entities during sexual intercourse.
Questioner, what I was getting at more precisely is the path of energy transfer. When we close an electrical circuit, it's easy to follow the path of energy. It goes along the conductor. I am trying to determine whether this transfer is between the heart chakras of each entity. I am trying to trace the physical flow of the energy to try to get an idea of blockages after the veil. I may be off on a wrong track here. If I'm wrong, we'll just drop it. Can you tell me something about that?
Ra, I am Ra. In such a drawing or schematic representation of the circuitry of two mind/body/spirits or mind/body/spirit complexes in sexual or other energy transfer, the circuit opens always at the red or base center and moves as possible through the intervening energy centers. If baffled, it will stop at orange. If not, it shall proceed to yellow. If still unbaffled, it shall proceed to green. It is well to remember in the case of the mind/body/spirit that the chakras or energy centers could well be functioning without crystallization.
Questioner, in other words, they would be functioning, but it would be equivalent in electrical circuitry to having a high resistance, shall we say. Although the circuit would be complete, red through green, the total quantity of energy transferred would be less. Is this correct?
Ra, I am Ra. We might most closely associate your query with the concept of voltage. The uncrystallized, lower centers cannot deliver the higher voltage. The crystallized centers may become quite remarkable in the high voltage characteristics of the energy transfer as it reaches green ray, and indeed as green ray is crystallized, this also applies to the higher energy centers until such energy transfers become an home station for the creator.
Questioner, would you please correct me on this statement, then? I'm guessing that what happens is that when a transfer takes place, the energy is that light energy that comes in through the feet of the entity and starts the voltage or potential difference starts with the red energy center and, in the case of the green ray transfer, terminates at the green energy center and then must leap or flow from the green energy center of one entity to the green of the other, and then something happens to it. Could you clear up my thinking on that?
Ra, I am Ra. Yes.
Questioner, would you please do that?
Ra, I am Ra. The energy transfer occurs in one releasing of the potential difference. This does not leap between green and green energy centers but is the sharing of the energies of each from red ray upwards. In this context, it may be seen to be at its most efficient when both entities have orgasm simultaneously. However, it functions as transfer if either has the orgasm, and indeed in the case of the physically expressed love between a mated pair which does not have the conclusion you call orgasm, there is, nonetheless, a considerable amount of energy transferred due to the potential difference which has been raised as long as both entities are aware of this potential and release its strength to each other by desire of the will in a mental or mind complex dedication. You may see this practice as being used to generate energy transfers in some of your practices of what you may call other than Christian religious distortion systems of the law of one.
Questioner, would you give me an example of that last statement?
Ra, I am Ra. We preface this example with the reminder that each system is quite distorted and its teachings always half lost. However, one such system is that called the Tantric Yoga.
Questioner, considering individual A and individual B, if individual A experiences the orgasm is the energy, then, transferred to individual B in a greater amount. Is that correct?
Ra, I am Ra. Your query is incomplete. Please restate.
Questioner, what I am trying to determine is the direction of energy transfer as a function of orgasm. Which entity gets the transferred energy? I know it's a dumb question, but I want to be sure I have it cleared up.
Ra, I am Ra. If both entities are well polarized and vibrating in green ray love, any orgasm shall offer equal energy to both.
Questioner, I see. Before the veil, can you describe any other physical difference that we haven't talked about yet with respect to the sexual energy transfers or relationships or anything prior to veiling?
Ra, I am Ra. Perhaps the most critical difference of the veiling, before and after, was that before the mind, body, and spirit were veiled, entities were aware that each energy transfer and, indeed, very nearly all that proceeds from any intercourse, social or sexual, between two entities has its character and substance in time/space rather than space/time. The energies transferred during the sexual activity are not, properly speaking, of space/time. There is a great component of what you may call metaphysical energy transferred. Indeed, the body complex as a whole is greatly misunderstood due to the post-veiling assumption that the physical manifestation called the body is subject only to physical stimuli. This is emphatically not so.
Questioner, after the veil, in our particular case now, we have, in the circuitry of which we were speaking, what you'd call a blockage that first occurs in orange ray. Could you describe what occurs with this first blockage and what its effects are on each of the entities, assuming that one blocks and the other does not, or if both are blocked?
Ra, I am Ra. This material has been covered previously. If both entities are blocked, both will have an increased hunger for the same activity, seeking to unblock the baffled flow of energy. If one entity is blocked and the other vibrates in love, the entity baffled will hunger still but have a tendency to attempt to continue the procedure of sating the increasing hunger with the one vibrating green ray due to an impression that this entity might prove helpful in this endeavor. The green ray active individual shall polarize slightly in the direction of service to others but have only the energy with which it began.
Questioner, I didn't mean to cover previously covered material. I was trying to work into a better understanding of what we're talking about, with background of the veiling process, and what I was actually attempting to do was to discover something new in asking the question, so please, if I ask any questions in the future that have already been covered, don't bother to repeat the material. I am just searching the same area for the possibility of greater enlightenment with respect to the particular area, since it seems to be one of the major areas of experience in our present condition of veiling that produces a very large amount of catalyst, and I am trying to understand, to use a poor term, how this veiling process created a greater experience and how this experience evolved, shall I say. The questions are very difficult at times to ask. It occurs to me that many statues or drawings of the one known as Lucifer or the devil is shown with an erection. Is this a function of this orange ray blockage, and was this, shall we say, known by, in some minimal way, you might say, by those who devised these statues and drawings, etc.?
Ra, I am Ra. There is, of course, much other distortion involved in a discussion of any mythic archetypical form. However, we may answer in the affirmative and note that you are perceptive.
Questioner, then, with respect to the green, blue, and indigo transfers of energy, how would the mechanism for these transfers differ in making them possible or setting the groundwork for them than the orange ray? I know this is very difficult to ask and I may not be making any sense, but what I am trying to do is get to an understanding of the foundation for transfers in each of the rays and the preparations for the transfers, you might say, or the fundamental requirements and biases and potentials for these transfers. Could you expand on that for me, please? I am sorry for the poor question.
Ra, I am Ra. We would take a moment to state in reply to a previous comment that we shall answer each query whether or not it has been previously covered, for not to do so would be to baffle the flow of quite another transfer of energy. To respond to your query, we firstly wish to agree with your supposition that the subject you now query upon is a large one, for in it lies an entire system of opening the gateway to intelligent infinity. You may see that some information is necessarily shrouded in mystery by our desire to preserve the free will of the adept. The great key to blue, indigo, and finally, that great capital of the column of sexual energy transfer, violet energy transfers, is the metaphysical bond or distortion which has the name among your peoples of unconditional love. In the Blu-ray energy transfer, the quality of this love is refined in the fire of honest communication and clarity. This, shall we say, normally, meaning in general, takes a substantial portion of your space/time to accomplish, although there are instances of matings so well refined in previous incarnations and so well remembered that the Blu-ray may be penetrated at once. This energy transfer is of great benefit to the seeker in that all communication from this seeker is, thereby, refined, and the eyes of honesty and clarity look upon a new world. Such is the nature of Blu-ray energy, and such is one mechanism of potentiating and crystallizing it. As we approach indigo ray transfer, we find ourselves in a shadowland where we cannot give you information straight out or plain, for this is seen by us to be an infringement. We cannot speak at all of violet ray transfer, as we do not, again, desire to break the law of confusion. We may say that these jewels, though dearly bought, are beyond price for the seeker, and might suggest that just as each awareness is arrived at through a process of analysis, synthesis, and inspiration, so should the seeker approach its mate and evaluate each experience, seeking the jewel.
Questioner: is there any way to tell which ray the transfer was for an individual after the experience? Is there any way for the individual to tell in which particular ray the transfer occurred?
Ra, I am Ra. There is only a subjective yardstick or measure of such. If the energies have flowed so that love is made whole, green ray transfer has taken place. If, by the same entity's exchange, greater ease in communication and greater sight has been experienced, the energy has been refined to the Blu-ray energy center. If the polarized entities, by this same energy transfer experience, find that the faculties of will and faith have been stimulated, not for a brief while but for a great duration of what you call time, you may perceive the indigo ray transfer. We may not speak of the violet ray transfer except to note that it is an opening to the gateway of intelligent infinity. Indeed, the indigo ray transfer is also this, but, shall we say, the veil has not yet been lifted.
Questioner: before the veil, were there, let me put it this way, did the logos, or did most logoi plan before the veil to create a system of random sexual activity or specific pairing of entities for periods of time, or did they have an objective in this respect?
Ra, I am Ra. This shall be the last full query of this working. The harvest from the previous creation was that which included the male and female mind/body/spirit. It was the intention of the original logoi that entities mate with one another in any fashion which caused a greater polarization. It was determined, after observation of the process of many logoi, that polarization increased many-fold if the mating were not indiscriminate. Consequent logoi thusly preserved a bias towards the mated relationship, which is more characteristic of more disciplined personalities and of what you may call higher densities. The free will of each entity, however, was always paramount, and a bias only could be offered. May we ask if there may be any brief queries before we leave this instrument?
Questioner: is there anything we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or improve the contact?
Ra, I am Ra. We would ask that each of the support group be especially vigilant in the, what you would call, immediate future due to this instrument's unbidden but serious potential for increased distortion towards illness/health. You are most conscientious. We thank you, my friends, and leave you in the glorious light and love of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai.